Welcome back to a Crypto Ski Conversation. So there's a lot that I could be covering within the community, but I really like this live that Eleanor Terrett had with Charles Gasparino and John Deaton. And there's a couple different segments. Some are like 5 minutes, some are just a few minutes, but there's like six different sections of this hour-long little live little debate that she has that I thought was intriguing. So we're going to play that and kind of commentate on it. So let's take a quick listen into this.
Our funds, that should be the focus, right? The plumbing, like you said.
What about, but also if I have $10,000 on Coinbase in Bitcoin, that should be my funds. If there is a bankruptcy, if Coinbase or someone else were to file bankruptcy, there should be focusing on how do we protect those customer funds instead of, let's say an exchange files for bankruptcy and you had an individual investor with $10,000 in crypto or on stable coins in FTX. That money should not go to pay FTX creditors. That $10,000 should be protected. That individual customer, their money should be protected. That's why I say a lot of people think I'm anti-regulation. No, we need the government, the SEC to focus, or the commodities exchange to focus on those types of things, making sure that an exchange is backed 1-to-1 for every, if they say they have 10,000 Bitcoins, they have 10,000 Bitcoins, right?
Which I completely agree with that. And it never made sense to me that, if I put my digital assets on, we'll say the likes of Celsius, right? If my assets are on there, why is it considered property of theirs if, they go bankrupt and then my assets, my money goes to pay off their creditors? How is that a thing? So I completely agree when he says, we need regulations and regulators to come in and fix this. This is a problem. This isn't protecting investors. It still doesn't make sense how Chairman Gensler wants the entire industry to be classified as securities. CFTC saying, a lot of them are commodities, or that's kind of what we want, in regards of digital assets and crypto being classified as. But it's like when it comes to these bankruptcies of these platforms and these exchanges, when they go under, it's the property of that, those exchanges and those companies. But it's technically the customers, the consumer. Just doesn't make sense to me. So I completely agree with what he's saying here. We're going to go on to the next one here.
And he kind of latched onto it. I mean, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, but think about what Charlie just said. If you're so focused on crypto tokens being unregistered securities, how do you get past the FTT token of the guy you're sitting there meeting multiple times?
It's mind-boggling how that didn't get. The one thing that financed an operation that turned out to be a fraud is like, it's nuts. I mean,
and Charlie, you draw parallels between Madoff. When the whole Madoff scandal was brought to the surface, the SEC chairman at the time, I believe it was Chairman Cox, said, we messed up. We should have seen this. And he launched an internal investigation, said, we're going to clean up our act. Gensler hasn't said a thing.
A huge internal investigation.
Gensler hasn't said a thing. At least publicly.
It really calls for it. And it sounds like a column of mine. I want to switch the conversation to a subject near and dear to John's heart, and that's Bill Hinman.
Okay, so pay attention to this. So obviously, us in the community, we've seen the back and forth going with Charles Gasparino and certain XRP community members, and just like the heated debates, the heated, back and forth, him and his sad, and all these just weird things, right? Okay. Watch how, this is supposed to be Eleanor Terrett's live, that she has both of these two kind of having a conversation on kind of what's going on within litigation, what's been going on in the community, what's this, confusion when it comes to William Hinman and the Ethereum Free Pass speech and the discrepancies of his conflicts of interest and him violating the laws and rules that he was clearly supposed to follow, pertinent to the Jason Foster Empower Oversight Freedom of Information Act's of release of those emails and the drafts and documents that we have been showing within the community. So this is kind of what it's supposed to be. Eleanor Terrett's supposed to be the host, right? And you see how Charles Gasparino just, instead of kind of finishing his points there based on what Eleanor Terrett's saying, he completely transitions and says, I'd like to, change it, switch it up and change gears. And pretty much he's in a sense, controlling the narrative at this point. So just pay very close attention to everyone's demeanor, especially Charles Gasparino and his actions in regards of when John Deaton starts to speak and answer certain questions about kind of this back and forth about William Hinman and his involvement in we call hashtag ETHgate. Just watch what Charles Gasparino does. It's kind of crazy.
Here we go. I'm out.
Hey, Charlie, let me just interrupt you. Not since Wyatt Earp met Ike at the OK Corral has there been such buildup, brother.
I just want everybody to know that I've never met Bill Hinman. I've exchanged emails with him because we run stuff by him all the time. I have no problem. Why don't you just unpack what you think is the problem with him, just so we can get this out in the open?
All right, sure. And a long time ago, when you first had me on Fox Business on Liz's show, you had asked about the conflicts. And back then you were like, yeah, I'm not saying that he's guilty or anything, but it does look bad. And back then, Charlie, for 1 year, I never said that Bill Hinman violated any law. I said it looks bad and looks bad. Then the Empower someone who doesn't own tokens. He's actually Jason Foster. He runs Empower Oversight. He used to be an investigative guy for Senator Grassley. He started this nonprofit, which is oversight of the government, ethics and whatnot.
Are you peeping this? Like, did you see how rude this is? Who knows what Charles is doing? Maybe, he had some. At the end, you'll see he says he has a deadline or something. So who knows what he's doing? But the fact that, John Deaton's responding, giving his take on kind of what's going on, and he's typing, knowing we can hear it, knowing that I'm sure John Deaton and Eleanor Terry can hear it, they're probably bothered by it. Just keep paying attention to this.
Based on the stuff that I was doing and others, he sent some FOIA requests, and the SEC lied, and he sued them. And finally, they turned over the internal emails between the SEC from Bill Hinman, his law firm, Simpson Thatcher, and internal emails between Bill and the SEC Ethics Office. And what we learned, remember when I told you way back when that Bill Hinman collected $15 million while he was there at the SEC? And right. you justifiably said, hey, John, you can't hold it against someone for collecting a pension and their retirement. However, right. And I agreed with you. However, the ethics office looked at it, and he was an ongoing profit-sharing partner simultaneously. He wasn't retired. So he was getting paid profits that the clients at Simpson Thatcher were paying the firm, including him. And so what they said to him.
But let me ask you this, John, just devil's advocate. Is that pretty typical of a guy that's in a pension fund at a big major law firm? Is that like different than what goes on any place else when you go between government and you have your pension that you're still making? Your pension is still based on the profits of the fund?
No, that's not. But if it's based on a pension and future profits, but his was an ongoing, the more profitable that they were that year while he was at the SEC, and he was approving things that his firm, the Cannon IPO, which is a Bitcoin Ethereum mining company, he got approval of that. And they made money from that. He benefited from that. And so what the SEC office said is, this is different, Bill. And this is how they said it to him, Charlie. They go, this is different. You have an ongoing financial conflict. So the law, and it's 18 USC 208, they said it's a financial conflict bar. Because of this is different. You can't even talk to them. You can't email them. You can't meet them. You can't, or you're going to be in violation of the law. And after that, he met them 3 more times that we can prove conclusively. He met with them. In fact, there's an April 19th email that his office sent out to his partner in China, a guy by the name of Attorney Chen Lin, that was the Canine IPO. And that day, he met with him and had lunch with him.
Okay,
let me just finish this. In these emails, he's joking about the conflict of interest. He's making fun of it. And so that's the point that I'm saying to you is, for a guy like you, you've been on Wall Street forever.
I'm just wondering if he ran by, like, maybe he just said, listen,
See, there's a point there, though, like that John Deaton was trying to make. It's like, don't act like you don't know what you were doing was wrong. Even if it's not just an optics thing, even if it wasn't it wasn't emailed to him in regards of, what he would be in violation of. Like, he was quite aware of what's happening, and he just felt like he was untouchable. Listen to what John Deaton said. It was almost laughable. And on top of just the conflicts of interest and the corruption in regards of, you're giving Ethereum and Bitcoin this free pass, right? And then you're helping this IPO of this company that deals with Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, there shouldn't be any confusion here. It's obvious, but we're going to see what Charles Gasparino has to say.
I'm having lunch with someone. Can I do it? And they said, sure, go.
No, the emails prove otherwise. They actually get stern with him, Charlie. He says at one point, he says, okay, let's talk about this live. In other words, he didn't want it in writing anymore. And I'm looking at the email. It says, happy to talk. This is from the SEC ethics chief. Happy to talk live. My outlook is up to date if you want to schedule something. However, the analysis is the same for Simpson as it always been. You have a bar under the criminal financial conflict with Simpson because you have an ongoing financial interest in the firm. Meeting with them while having such a conflict is not permitted. As we discussed during your briefing, even calls with them are not permitted. And so it's different than the revolving door. And I think from your perspective, and you can tell me I'm full of shit if you want, because we have that kind of relationship. It's fine. But my belief about all the about my Twitter, I guess my belief is that you, because you've seen the revolving door, you've reported on the revolving door historically, that it looks like businesses.
Let me just stop right there. What's he mean he doesn't know? Okay, no one knows all the ins and outs and the specifics, right? That's what we're trying to find out. But like, based on the evidence and the facts that are presented that he is well aware of, he's been reporting on it, like John Deaton saying, for you to sit there and say you don't know, but you're coming at community members for calling you out for kind of flipping the script on us for God knows why. Okay. Everyone has their opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Who knows what ulterior motives Charles Gasparino has, but it's like, don't act like you don't know. All we do know is what the facts are and what's present. You're talking to John Deaton of all people. So he's only going to present facts. It's not his feelings. It's not, his emotions. It's the hard facts. And that's all we have to go off of. So to say you don't know, you just look like a clown. And that's no disrespect to Charles, but it just looks silly. We'll continue.
As usual that you've seen go on for years.
Yeah, and by the way, it's usually like 99.999% of the time it's legal. They either get a waiver to have lunch with the guy, they either do this or that, and no one cares. And so, but what I'm wondering is, what makes me why I'm a little bit skeptical of this is like it's in Gary Gensler's interest theoretically, or Elizabeth Warren's interest, or whoever, to stick it to anybody in the Trump administration. And yet, this is not like resonating. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I did, just so you know, I did a FOIA request about it because Empower sent they sent a referral for an investigation into it to the Inspector General. And I sent a FOIA request to the SEC asking them how did they respond to that referral. And they said to me, we can't give you any documents because an investigation may be pending. So I don't know if there's something internally going on. There may not be. Listen, I don't think Gary.
An investigation into Hinman, John?
That's what they said. But they also said, to be fair to Bill Hinman, because I don't want to say anything that's not true. They said, but just because we're saying that to you doesn't mean there is an investigation. We're withholding the documents because there could be, but that doesn't mean there is. That's exactly how they said it. So I'm not saying that there is one. I'm telling you what they said, denying me the records. And so to answer Charlie's question, Gary Gensler, Charlie, I don't think he's going to be a guy big on conflicts. He hasn't talked to me. He hasn't talked to Coinbase or any of the other people that were trying to get attention. But he met with Vanguard 7 times in less than a year. And what does Vanguard do? They manage 90% of his $120 million personal wealth. I don't think.
So, yeah. So before he finishes his point here, really take that in. Multiple times he's met with Vanguard, who is managing, his wealth. But you can't even remotely acknowledge the over 70,000 XRP community members that have been blatantly hurt by the lawsuit that was dropped by Jay Clay and the SEC. Really put that into perspective. This is our SEC chairman who was set out to protect the investors that he so intensely hurting. Really put that in perspective.
I think he's a guy that's worried about conflicts is all I'm getting at. But I'm just
there's no doubt that Washington is a huge conflict of interest, and my own.
So we'll go on to the next one here. We'll play this one here.
Appearance, even if you don't do anything wrong, then you're in violation of it. And so that's why I said in Hinman's case, because he was told to stop doing it and he didn't, then that's where the violation is. But like I said, my question, I have to say this to Charlie, because I know that he talks to these guys and meets with them and all that. I would love to know one day if Jay Clayton regrets not going with Hester Peirce's safe harbor. Because I look back and, it was on his last day that the Ripple case was filed, and he can't agree with the way Gensler's been handling this. I mean, obviously I'm not a fan of Jay Clayton's, but I got to imagine, I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that. Do you think he regrets maybe being so hands off crypto?
Well, was he hands off crypto, or did he focus on the tokens?
Well, I did. No, he was aggressive with the ICOs, and
Right.
They prosecuted 50 some cases. That's true, right. But he wasn't receptive.
I don't know. For me personally, the way Charles Gasparino just kind of answered that question with a question, it was kind of like arrogant. It was almost condescending. It's like, oh, what really was he? Because he was focusing on this. So it's like, well, if you know that, right, why don't you just answer the question? Be like, no, I disagree with you, John. I think he did A, B, and C, but it's just the way he approached it. It's just kind of strange, man, just the vibe that I'm getting from this gentleman. Even though, John Deaton's been nothing but respectful to this gentleman ever since all this stuff within the community's been happening. Let's continue on.
Receptive to the safe harbor where Hester Peirce, advocated, let's give them some guidance. Say you got 3 to 5 years to meet these certain markers of decentralization or whatever it is. And if you meet these markers, you're a commodity. If you don't, you got to register with the SEC. When you look back, and that was offered in 2018, to me, it's so unfortunate. I feel like demoralized because I think that could have solved all this regulation by enforcement. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, listen, clearly the regulatory agenda that began with him and I like Jay a lot and continued through Gensler, in my view, was very misguided because it focused on the least potentially corrupt part. The most transparent part is the token. They're all, listen, I can make a great case that they're all bullshit. They're all there.
So pretty much without going too deep into what he's saying here, he's pretty much talking about like, it's obvious. Like you people should be able to put their big boy pants on or their big girl pants on. It's like, you know what you're buying. He was pretty much comparing it to like going to like a Lowe's and buying a washer and dryer. If you buy a new one, you expect it to be of quality and ready to use versus buying a used one that, is coming with risk. That's what he's saying when it comes to these digital assets, these tokens. So we're going to move on to the next one here.
Whatever it is, was it playing trading today, 23 on, it's gone up lately because of it's a flight to quality, because of all the other stuff that's going on. I'm not supposed to know that. Of course I know that. And, everybody knows that. And that's not what you need the SEC to protect you from. You need the SEC to protect you from stuff not getting ripped off. And then if you want to do public service announcements saying, remember you're buying air, you can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to have to beg off, guys. I got a deadline.
All right, Charlie. Thanks.
Charlie,
right.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck, guys. See you.
Thanks.
John, I just want to just finish that thought because I remember we were at Consensus last year and Rostin Benham, the CFTC chairman, was talking. Right. And I remember clearly because I wrote it down in my.
Hey, before they continue here, because this is a good part. Do you think old Charles there had a deadline? Was it believable?
Notes. He said, "We don't have to reinvent the wheel to regulate crypto." But I wonder if he feels the same way after FTX, because how can you not write new laws? How can you not, have more, regulation on this stuff now? I feel like there does need to be maybe an extra agency, a digital asset, monitoring agency, something similar to the SEC and CFTC, but something dedicated just to digital asset.
Where have you heard that before? And I know it's not just my channel, but like that's what we talked about. Like I firmly believe There needs to be some sort of new organization that's built up with experts. I'm talking genuine, true experts that are unbiased, that, know the technology, understand the laws that we have presently, but realize that this space is completely different from our normal, I guess you could say financial system. And, this new innovation, this technology is different. We can't compare this and scale this and regulate it based on the Howey test off some oranges and some property. It just can't be. I feel like we would have more success if somehow, in a timely and fair and just way, we've collectively built a unit in an organization that is specializing within this industry, knowing where this is going. Remember, they talk about, crypto, and they compare it to the internet. If you look at the, in past videos, whether it's mine or somebody else's, we've all shown the trend line of adoption and the rate of adoption and how fast and, how it's changed our lives, the course of our lives. I mean, look at where we're at now. We went from, being in school full time physically to now, most school is like online now. That's just a small segment of our lives. So like knowing where this technology is going, what it's capable of doing, those, solving real world problems and having real world use case. Why don't we develop an organization that can regulate this space properly, so you don't hinder or stifle innovation? You don't, drive people out of the United States. And that allows this space to flourish. I don't know. I agree with Ellie here, so let's listen into this.
That's just my opinion.
No, and I think at this point in time, the SEC should govern. If you're going to have an IPO, if you're going to have an ICO, initial coin offering, if you're going to publicly raise money and then use that money to build something out, sure. That's what the SEC should monitor, along with fraud and all of those things. But there should be some kind of, you can't take XRP. When people just look at the facts, you can't take something that was traded for 7.5 years publicly and 250 exchanges worldwide. And at least 6 jurisdictions have declared it not a security. And you allow the MoneyGram and you allow Coinbase to list it and all that. And then all of a sudden it's a security as people are walking out the door, right? And ETH isn't. But then then there's an election and you get a new president from a different party and he appoints Gensler. And now Gensler is going to go back and say that ETH is a security. We can't have financial markets where that's just the whims of these regulators. And Ellie, that's why conflicts of interest are so important, because when you don't have faith, if the government officials, whether it's a Trump appointee or a Biden appointee, if they're the ones picking the winners from the losers, then we don't have a free market. We don't have capitalism. You know what I mean? It's not. And that's the problem. The problem.
Yep, and I agree, man. Let's we got these last 2 short clips here. Let's take a quick listen in.
It doesn't mean that I think that Bill Hinman would go to jail for this violation, but it means that he should be it should be investigated and he should be held accountable for blatantly violating the statute. And that's all, because if you don't hold him responsible in this kind of scenario, then the next person does it and the next person does it. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And you just continue the cycle. That's just how it is. We're going to conclude with this right here.
Desensitizes a person. It's not that big of a deal. And it's why we have to hold them accountable when you can prove it. And we can prove that Hinman violated the law. I can't prove that Jay Clayton, I can prove that he had a conflict of interest and it looked bad, but you can't prove a criminal violation. With Hinman, you can prove a criminal violation.
Right. I just want to quickly just check in about the Hinman emails. Do you know anything? I don't know why you would, because I feel like we're just all waiting on tenterhooks to see if they're going to release them. Do you think they're going to release them? Or are we never going to see those emails?
Well, it all depends on to refresh your audience that are watching. The SEC has asked that the Hinman emails and the 58 drafts of the speech and the email comments about the speech from people like the director of trading and markets, or for Valerie S., or for anyone else, that all of that be sealed and not released to the public. And of course, Ripple objects. And the law is this: if the judge is going to rely on any of those emails for any purpose, she's going to order that they could be redacted, reasonable redactions, but unsealed and made to the public. If she decides that she's not relying on those emails for anything, then it's not a judicial document and she can seal it. So I would say that I believe that they're going to become public, but because I believe that the judge is going to rely on them for some purpose. It could be for the fair notice defense. It could be for, any kind of, factual issue or whatever. And so because of that, I lean toward they're going to be produced and publicly.
Do you think we'll see them before we get a ruling, or do you think we'll get a ruling and then we'll see?
I'm going to predict that we see them first, even though some others disagree with me, and I'm just guessing. So anybody's guess is as good as mine. But I believe that I don't think we're going to see a ruling, for a few months. I don't think it's coming. I said
Brad said May, didn't he? Brad Garlinghouse.
Yeah, I said at the very latest, at the very earliest, the end of March. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was into late April, early May. You know what I mean? I don't think it goes past June, but we could be in May. But there's also, the judge could decide that I'm just going to release it all together because of the drama that maybe releasing the emails is going to cause. So she wants everything dumped on the public at the same time. Mm-hmm. Maybe she does that, but I think that if I'm a judge and I got all these things, a lot of times I've looked at her previous rulings. She seems to get it off her plate and then move on to the next one. So we'll see. I could be wrong though.
So yeah, that's we'll see, man. I think John Deaton has been hitting things on the head. I mean, literally right over the target. And, based on his legal expertise, him, being involved into the community, being so close to this case, knowing its severity, being truly, I think he's just been on the side, the side of facts. And it's not emotion based. It's not none of that. It's just based on the facts. And that's what he's operating on. He's a humble guy who's very good at what he does. And he's there to support the community based on facts, not feelings. So when it comes to, XRP, Ripple, and this lawsuit versus the SEC, it's like all of us in this community, we know it's just a matter of when, not if, because we know and we truly believe that we are on the right side of law, on the right side of history. But I thought this was quite intriguing. I really want to shout out Eleanor Terrier, Charles Gasparino as well, and John Deaton for coming on and doing this. Obviously, you can see the numbers are running up. Everybody's retweeting and viewing it. It was just a solid segment, and I think it was necessary. But make sure you come to the Crypto is Key Conversations YouTube channel. Subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Crypto is Key 1. I really appreciate your support out there. With all that being said, stay strong out there and be safe.